Just want to know, how many of you like lima beans?
What is
Namir, you like
that?
lima beans? All right, good. All right.
What is that?
Lima beans is
It's
a
a
type
black.
of bean, like a green, like it's a
It's
green
like
light
tiny.
bean.
Tiny.
I'm not
They're
Corday.
small.
It's inside the book.
So I just wanted, did you like them too, Roger? Oh, you don't? Okay. So just Namir, he's the only one that likes lima beans. So I heard a
want
lot
change
of you
colors.
say that you've already heard this book, right? That you've
Yeah,
read it?
she changed colors in student life.
Okay, so why did she change colors though?
A whole bunch of
Raise your
No,
hand.
it's
I'll
actually
call on you
cool.
if you raise your hand. Yes, Fred.
It's actually cool.
No,
When you're
Okay, hold on.
Shit.
Hold on.
She didn't eat no lima beans.
And then she did.
Yes, Fred, yes, and Corday, thank you.
And then she did.
You guys are correct that she stopped eating lima beans, right? And so
Because her
she's,
friends thought that it was nasty.
yes. All right, well, let me read the story, and then I have an activity that you're going to do.
Okay.
Oh, you have to draw her.
All right, a bad case of stripes. Camellia Cream loved lima beans, but she never ate them. All of her friends hated lima beans, and she wanted to fit in. Camellia was always worried about what other people thought of her. Today, she was fretting even more than usual. It was the first day of school, and she couldn't decide what to wear. There were so many people to impress. She tried on 42 outfits, but none seemed quite right. She put on a pretty red dress and looked in the mirror. Then she screamed.
You know, Kim's
Her mother ran into the room and she screamed too. "Oh my heavens," she cried. "You're completely covered with stripes." This was certainly true. Camellia was striped from head to toe. She looked like a rainbow. Mrs. Cream felt Camelia's forehead. "Do you feel all right?" she asked. "I feel fine," Camellia answered. "But just look at me." "You get back in bed this instant," her mother ordered. "You are not going to school today." Camellia was relieved. She didn't want to miss the first day of school, but she was afraid of what other kids would say. And she had no idea what to wear with those crazy stripes. That afternoon, Dr. Bumble came to examine Camellia. "Most extraordinary," he exclaimed. "I've never seen anything like it. Are you having any coughing, sneezing, runny nose, aches, pains, chills, hot flashes, dizziness, drowsiness, short of breath, or uncontrollable twitching?" "No," Camellia told him. "I feel fine." "Well then," Dr. Bumble said, "turn to Mrs. Cream. I don't see any reason why she should go to school tomorrow. Here's some ointment that should clear up those stripes in a few days. If it doesn't, you know where to reach me." And off he went. Yes, X.
It looks like Camelia's about to lick the doctor's nose.
It does look like that. But what is she showing him?
Her
Her tongue.
The
Tracy,
doctor is so freaked out that his cheeks are red.
is his cheeks red? Yeah, they are. I would probably be a little
Any
scared too
soldier
if
is
somebody was
his
striped
eyes.
colors. All right. The next day was a disaster. Everyone at school laughed at Camellia. They called her Camellia Crayon and Night of the Living Lollipop. She tried her best to act as if everything was normal, but when the class said the Pledge of Allegiance, her stripes turned red, white, and blue, and she broke out into stars.
So whatever her does, that doesn't change it.
Yeah. That's exactly what's happening. The other kids thought this was great. One yelled out, "Let's see some purple polka dots." Sure enough, Camellia turned all purple polka dotty. Someone else shouted, "Checkerboard," and a pattern of squares covered her skin. Soon, everyone was calling out different shapes and colors, and poor Camellia was changing faster than you can change channels on a TV.
Nuh-uh.
Yes.
You can see. I don't see the checker thingy.
Right here on her arm. She's red and red and orange checkers. That night, Mr. Harms, the school principal, called. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Cream," he said. "I'm going to have to ask you to keep Camellia home from school. She's just too much of a distraction, and I've been getting calls from the other parents. They're afraid those stripes may be contagious." Camellia was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe that 2 days ago everyone liked her. Now nobody wanted to be in the same room with her. Her father tried to make her feel better. "Is there anything I can get you, sweetheart?" he asked. "No, thank you," said Camellia. What she really wanted was a nice plate of lima beans, but she had been laughed at enough for one day.
All she wanted is a lima bean.
gonna make it.
Well, yes, I see, Dr. Bumble mumbled. When Mr. Cream's phoned the next day, I think I'd better bring in a specialist. We'll be right over. About an hour later, Dr. Bumble arrived with 4 people in long white coats. He introduced them to the Creams. This is Dr. Group, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Cricket, and Dr. Young. Then the specialist went to work on Camellia. They squeezed and jabbed, tapped and tested. It was very uncomfortable. Well, it's not the mumps, concluded Dr. Group. Or the measles, said Dr. Sponge. Definitely not chicken pox, put in Dr. Cricket. Or sunburn, said Dr. Young. Try these, said the specialist. They each handed her a bottle filled with different colored pills. Take one of each before bed, said Dr. Group. Then they filed out the front door, followed by Dr. Bumble. Does anybody know what she's going to turn into then?
A bed.
A bed?
Oh, the bubble gum thing.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I don't
They
know.
gave her what?
No, a bucket of pills.
Oh, she's
gonna
gonna turn
into a
pills.
bucket of pills.
Yep.
I know it.
That night, Camellia took her medicine. It was awful. When she woke up the next morning, she did feel different, but when she got dressed, her clothes didn't fit
A
right.
gumball machine.
She looked in the mirror, and there, staring back at her, was a giant multicolored pill with her face on it.
That's what I.
It looked like a gumball machine.
It does kind of look like a gumball machine. Dr. Bumble rushed over as soon as Mrs. Cream called, but this time, instead of the specialist, he brought the experts. Dr. Gordon and Dr. Mellon were the finest scientist mind in the land. Once again, Camellia was poked and prodded, looked at and listened to. The experts wrote down lots of numbers. Then they huddled together and whispered. Dr. Gord finally spoke. It might be a virus, he announced with authority. Suddenly, fuzzy little virus balls appeared all over Camellia. Or possibly some from a form of bacteria, said Mr. Mellon. Out popped squiggly little bacteria tails. Or it could be fungus, added Dr. Gord. Instantly, Camellia was covered with different colored fungus blotches. The experts looked at Camellia and then at each other. We need to go over these numbers again at the lab, Dr. Gord explained. We'll call you when we know something. But the experts didn't have a clue, much less a cure.
Give her a llama thing.
A what?
Llama.
A lima bean.
Yeah.
By now, the TV news had found out about Camellia. Reporters from every channel were outside her house, telling the story of the bizarre case of the incredible changing kid. Soon, a huge crowd was camped out on the front lawn.
Oh my God, it's too much.
Those
Those
people.
people. Oh my God, I know it.
The Creams were swamped with all kinds of remedies from psychologists, allergists, herbalists, nutritionists, psychs, an old medicine man, a guru, and even a veterinarian. Each so-called cure only added to poor Camellia's strange appearance until it was hard to even recognize her. She sprouted roots and berries and crystals and feathers and a long furry tail, but nothing worked. One day, a woman who called herself an environmental therapist claimed she could cure Camellia. Close your eyes, she said. Breathe deeply and become one with the room. I wish you hadn't have said that, Camellia groaned. Slowly, she started to melt into the walls of her room. Her bed became her mouth, her nose was the dresser, and 2 paintings were her eyes. The therapist screamed and ran from the house. What are we going to do? Cried Mrs. Cream. It just keeps getting worse and worse. She began to sob. So do you guys see the eyes and the nose, or the mouth and the nose?
The green stuff behind it.
It's the eyes and the nose and the mouth, but where's the eyebrows? And the eyelashes?
I'm guessing the eyelashes are probably right here. Do you see?
The trees are probably.
And then this is probably her eyebrows. At that moment, Mrs. Cream heard a quiet little knock at the door. He opened it, and there stood an old woman who was just as plump and sweet as a strawberry. Excuse me, she said brightly, but I think I can help.
I know.
Yes.
The lima bean, the lady right there, who's the old lady, she's gonna drop a lot of lima beans inside the little girl's mouth.
Yep. Do you think she's going to take them at first? Do you think Camelia's going to take them?
Yes.
Or do you think she's going to refuse them?
No,
So-
she's gonna refuse.
She's gonna refuse. She went into Camelia's room and looked around. My goodness, she said with a shake of her head. What have we here is a bad case of stripes, one of the worst I've ever seen. She pulled a container of small green beans from her bag. Here, she said, these might do the trick. Are those magic beans? Asked Mrs. Cream. Oh my, no, replied the old kind woman. There's no such thing. These are just plain old lima beans. I bet you'd like some, wouldn't you? She asked Camellia. Camellia wanted a big heaping spoonful, or a plateful of lima beans more than just about anything, but she was still afraid to admit it. Yuck, she said. No one likes lima beans, especially me. Oh dear, the old woman said sadly. I guess I was wrong about you. She put the beans back in her bag and started towards the door. Camellia watched the old woman walk away. Those beans would taste so good, and being laughed at for eating them was nothing compared to what she'd been going through. She finally couldn't stand it. Wait, she cried. The truth is, I really love lima beans. I thought so, said the old woman with a smile. She took a handful of beans and plopped them into Camelia's mouth. Said Camellia.
So Fred was right. She was going to refuse.
Yeah.
Then she did.
So then she did, and after she took them, what happened?
She turned into her own herself.
Suddenly, the branches, feathers, and squiggly tail began to disappear. The whole room swirled around, and when it stopped, there stood Camellia, and everything was back to normal. I'm cured, she shouted. Yes, said the old woman. I knew the real you was in there somewhere. And she patted Camellia on the head, and then she went outside and vanished into the crowd. Afterwards, Camellia wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said she was weird, but she didn't care a bit. She ate all the lima beans she wanted, and she never had even a touch of stripes again.
The stripes on her.
So, like one?
The stripes was on her bow.
Yeah, she did have stripes on her bow. So I have a question. What was this story really about? What was like the main idea? Corday?
Be yourself.
Being herself. Sorry, Nyla. Was that what you were going to say? All right, so being yourself. So it wasn't really about lima beans, though, was it?
No.
No, it really is about that. It doesn't matter what other people think. If you like lima beans or if you like something, it's okay, right? So,
I got it.
hold on. I want to explain what we're going to do in just a minute. Do you know what a character trait is?
No.
Xavier,
Well, I didn't have my hand up before you even said that.
do you know what a character trait is?
No.
Okay, does anybody? Corday.
A character trait is something about that character.
Something about Camellia or something about you guys.
Well, now can
So I'm going to read you the definition so that you can remember. A personality characteristic that someone has which they are unlikely to change, and it helps them make them the individual person they are. So this whole book was kind of about Camellia and how she liked lima beans, but because other people were making fun of her,
she didn't take them.
she didn't eat them and she hid them. So what you're going to do is I'm going to give you a piece of paper, just a small piece of paper. And when I give it to you, I want you to go back to your desk and write one characteristic of Camellia on it, okay? And then I'll come around and check it. And then once I get this paper from you, I'm going to give you a face, and you're going to put your character traits. So if I was filling one out, I would put that one of the character traits of myself is I'm really shy.
Jen's gonna put.
Okay? So that I'm shy.
I'm shy.
Well, I would just put shy. So you don't have to put I'm shy, you can just put the word. So you're going to fill it out. There's 5 places for you to fill out. So you have to come up with 5. And then if you have extra time, you can color in like the stripes, kind of like the book. But that's what our activity is going to be. So when I pass out one of these, go ahead and go back to your desk and put a characteristic of the book. So about Camellia first. Oops, sorry. And then when I read it and you tell me why, then I'll give you this.
Wait, you gotta. Okay, I'm just gonna put consider this.
So one characteristic about Camellia. Is your eye all better? I said, is your eye better?
No.
Your bow?
No, it works just like the ice.
I need help.
Go ahead and give it back to me then.
No.
That's
I was trying to ask.